So it looks like a pyramid. Okay, so from now on we're starting the third exam material, or the final exam material. I don't know if you guys have watched that show, The Office, but there is a point in which Michael Scott comes in and he's like, those are phone cards or something, and he's like, I'm investing in this business and it's phone cards, and then Jim tells him, no, it's a pyramid scheme. Like it's a good show. If you guys haven't watched it, you should watch it. I love that show. I think it's the show of the millennium. It's so good. Okay. So far in the last chapters we talked about competitive markets. Now we're going to move towards talking more about markets that has more monopoly, that is hard to enter, and what are its implications and stuff. But so from selfishness, okay, exam 3 material. Please on your notes put that exam 3 material begins. From selfishness comes good through markets. So far we said the Adam Smith's quote was, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or the brewer or the baker that we get our dinner, it's from their own self-regard and self-interest, right? But, so that's what Adam Smith said, but yes, it's good that people look out for them, and that's also good for the market, but sometimes there needs to be some regulations. So there was a meat packing factory, this is back, I don't know, like 80 years ago or something, and it was really in bad condition. This is in US. So a guy, he wrote a book about it. He went to, he lived in that area, or he went to just observe the factory and how they're packing meat, and there were rats everywhere. So this meat was being supplied to the rest of the United States, and people were eating it, but there were rats everywhere, and it was just horrible conditions. So he wrote a book on the meat suppliers and how they need to be regulated. They were making a lot of money, people were buying from them, but nobody was keeping a check or balance on them. After that book, FDA and things like Food Drug Administration came into being. So this is a very old story, but after that initiative he took, he wrote the book, and it became very popular. So things like we need to regulate businesses, we need to regulate markets came into being. So what's profitable is not always what's best for the people. So we need some sort of regulations sometimes. Some things need to be regulated. So things like, for example, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, environmental agency, protection agency, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. SEC is Stock Exchange Commission, I think, or Security Exchange Council or something. Federal Reserve, the National Bank or Federal Bank of the United States. So that the Jungle Book from Sinclair was a very iconic book in terms of it really brought attention to we need to have some sort of regulations in our markets. So what are the roles of the government? How should they regulate and what's their role? Ensure minimum level of safety. Efficiency in consumer product. Promote competition. Prevent monopoly. Not everything is for sale. So, for example, a market shouldn't exist for child pornography, right? That's something that's not for, or shouldn't be for sale. So prevent certain markets from existing. Market prices many things wrong. So take into account of externalities. So externality, and I think we briefly talked about it, is when there is a market transaction between a producer and a consumer, and a third person who's not part of the transaction is getting affected by the transaction. So, for example, there's a town that has a Tabasco manufacturing plant, and that town has a very it has a very strong, not fragrance, but smell of the Tabasco sauce. So much that people who live in that town get really disturbed by the smell of it. Now, obviously, they are not part of the transaction, right? They are not Tabasco suppliers or producers. And some of them may not even buy Tabasco, so they're not buyers either. So they're not involved in the transaction, but they're negatively getting affected by the fume that the factory releases. So things like that, the government should step in and say, you know what, these people are getting negatively affected by it, so you need to charge, so the price that you're paying or the tax you're paying on these Tabasco sauces should be higher, or something like that, that takes into account the externalities and adds it to the market price, right? Because the market price is just decided by producers and suppliers, right? There's no government involved in the supply and demand curve, right? But sometimes they should get involved in that supply and demand and put like some tax or something that takes account into any negative influence the product has, or you know, it's causing any negativity. So if there is a negative externality, it's negatively affecting people, government should tax. If the product or the service is positively affecting, then you should subsidize, or government should subsidize. If it's a positive externality, government should subsidize. Subsidy is just like government giving extra money to the farm or a company for help. Like, it's just like giving out cash. Taxes, taking money from them. So whenever there are profits in any industry, it will create competition. But what about industries like gas or oil? Profits can certainly be made there, but can any one of us open like a gas extracting plant, or you know, own a gas or petrol reservoir or something like that? No, it has very limited access. Very limited people can access those kind of things, right? So, what about oil industry? Oil is the topmost profitable industry in the world.
gold?
I don't know, it's one of the top. No, right? There are barriers to entry. So one of the barriers for oil is that you can't grow oil. It is where it is, right? So that makes it difficult. Like agriculture, anybody can grow it. So it's competitive, you know. But oil, not anybody can grow it. It doesn't work like that. So there's limited land, and so can't grow it. Limited availability of land, etc. It's kind of like natural resource, right? Some people have it, some don't. So things like number one would be, so there's control